Clint Eastwood returned in silence to his old school in Oakland, driven by a simple desire to revisit his memories. As he walked through the empty corridors, something unexpected made him stop. His eyes caught the image of a gray-haired man, moving slowly as he scrubbed the floor. There was something about the way he held the broom, something that triggered a distant memory. It was him, the janitor of his youth. But what was he still doing there? A shiver ran through Clint. What he was about to discover would change not only that old janitor's life, but his own. Before we continue with this story, comment on where you're watching from. And if you like stories like this, subscribe to the channel now. Tomorrow, we'll have another exciting story for you. The night in California was illuminated by the glow of neon signs, reflecting off the damp streets after the rain. The sky blended shades of dark blue and orange, while the distant sound of traffic created a nostalgic melody. Clint got out of the car, taking a deep breath of the air of the city that had seen him grow up. In front of him, the building of his old school remained practically untouched by time. Decades had passed since his last visit. He had been invited to a charity event, an initiative to help underprivileged young people follow their dreams. This touched Clint deeply. After all, he had known what it was like to struggle since childhood. As he stepped into the courtyard, the memories came flooding back. The sounds of students running, lockers banging, laughter echoing through the corridors. Everything was still vivid in his mind. Then something caught his eye. A lone figure was moving down the side corridor, his steps slow and methodical. The broom glided smoothly across the floor, the bucket rolling silently across the tiles. Clint stopped in the middle of the path, frowning. That posture, that way of walking, even after so long, he recognized it. His heart squeezed. It couldn't be. He moved forward hesitantly, his shoes making a slight noise on the concrete. The lights flickered above him, casting long shadows down the corridor. And then, finally, the man turned around. Clint held his breath. The same weather-beaten face, the same gentle eyes, now surrounded by deep wrinkles. Mr. Thompson? Clint took a few more steps, feeling a mixture of disbelief and nostalgia. The old janitor raised his head, his tired eyes narrowing slightly when he heard his voice. For a moment, he showed no recognition. He just bowed his head politely. But then, as if a veil had been removed, his expression changed. Clint? The voice was hoarse with age, but there was something in it. Something familiar. Something that spoke of a bond forgotten by time. Clint let out a low, incredulous laugh. It's been so long. Mr. Thompson nodded slowly. Clint watched him, seeing past and present overlap in his mind. A long time. The silence stretched on, weighed down by the years. Clint had always known that Mr. Thompson was a silent presence in the school. A man who worked tirelessly without ever drawing attention to himself. Someone who looked after the students without anyone noticing. But when he was young, Clint did. He saw how Mr. Thompson helped without needing recognition. And somehow, even with so many students, Mr. Thompson always saw Clint too. Memories began to resurface. In the 1940s, a young Clint Eastwood used to sit alone in the gym after swimming practice. He stared at the floor in frustration. That day's practice had been especially difficult. The coaches demanded extreme discipline, and he felt the weight of expectations. He just wanted to stand there, in silence, until the hall emptied. But then, footsteps. A shadow fell over him, and a gruff but gentle voice spoke. "Rough day, Clint?" Clint didn't look up. He just nodded. Mr. Thompson didn't insist. He sat down next to him and put down the bucket he was carrying. "People think I only clean the floor," he said. "But I see everything. I see the students who think no one notices them. I see those who fight silent battles." There was a pause before he continued. "You're not as invisible as you think, kid." Clint never forgot those words. At the time, they didn't seem to mean much. But now, decades later, he realized that Mr. Thompson had always been around, long before Clint realized how much he needed someone like that. He blinked, coming back to the present. He looked at the man in front of him. Time had left its mark. His hair, once dark, was now completely white. His uniform was clean but worn. His hands, rough and wrinkled, held the broom with silent firmness. But what surprised Clint most was not Mr. Thompson's age. It was his weariness. Not just in his body, but in his eyes. How many years had he spent doing this? How many endless nights? How many lonely mornings? How many floors scrubbed? How many rooms cleaned? And, most importantly, why was he still there? Clint let out a low sigh, forcing a smile. "I never imagined I'd find you here, Mr. Thompson." The old man laughed softly, shaking his head. "I never left." The words were spoken lightly, but Clint noticed something in the tone of his voice. He looked at the bucket, at the still wet floor, at the badge pinned to Mr. Thompson's chest. Reality hit him like a punch in the stomach. Clint felt a tightness in his chest. "Mr. Thompson, do you still work full-time?" The old man hesitated before nodding. "Work keeps me on my feet, you know." Clint frowned. That wasn't a straight answer. There was something in the way he spoke, a hidden truth behind that tired expression. Clint observed his posture, the slight tremor in his fingers, the stiffness in his movements, the discreet way he supported his weight on one of his legs, as if trying to relieve an invisible pain. This wasn't just work. It was survival. A shiver ran down Clint's spine. An 80-year-old man shouldn't be standing there, still scrubbing the floor, still carrying the weight of the school on his shoulders. He had seen it before, how society let people like Mr. Thompson fade into the background, forgotten, abandoned, forced to struggle on alone. And suddenly, Clint needed to know the truth. "Why do you still work here, Mr. Thompson?" A shadow crossed the old man's face. He hesitated, and that hesitation said it all. Clint couldn't get that uncomfortable feeling out of his head that night. At home, lying on the sofa, he relived the moment over and over again, the tired smile, the bent posture, the faded uniform. Mr. Thompson had been at that school for decades. But why? Why, at the age of 80, was he still there? There was only one way to find out. The next morning, Clint returned to the school. No cameras, no organizers, just him and his questions. He went straight to the maintenance wing, where the janitor's office was. The door was ajar. Inside, Mr. Thompson was sitting at a metal table, carefully sewing a tear in his own shirt. His movements were slow but steady. The weight of years was present in every gesture. Clint knocked lightly on the door. "Mr. Thompson?" The old man looked up, surprised to see him again. "Clint? Are you back?" Clint smiled and went inside. "I had to come back. I couldn't stop thinking about you." The old man laughed softly, shaking his head. "You don't have to worry about an old janitor like me." But Clint wasn't convinced. He sat in front of him, watching as he finished sewing. Then he asked the question that was weighing heavily on his chest. "Why do you still work here, Mr. Thompson?" Silence filled the room. The old man sighed, putting the needle away. "Because I have no choice, son." Clint leaned forward, attentive. "My pension isn't enough. I've worked all my life, but what I get barely covers my rent and food. The cost of living goes up, but my income stays the same." Clint felt his jaw clench. "What about your family? Don't you have anyone who can help?" Mr. Thompson shook his head slowly. "I don't have anyone else. My wife died years ago. We had no children. Now it's just me." Clint's heart squeezed. Now he understood. The weight on Mr. Thompson's shoulders, the quiet resignation in his voice. This man, who had spent decades helping others, was being forgotten by the very system to which he had dedicated his life. But there was more. Mr. Thompson moved his hand to his knee, massaging it distractedly. Clint noticed. "Are you in pain?" The old man hesitated, but nodded. "It's my knee. The doctor says I need surgery, but I can't afford it. And if I stop working, I won't be able to pay the bills." "I'll carry on." Clint clenched his fists. This wasn't right. That man had spent his whole life keeping the school clean, ensuring that the students had a safe environment in which to learn. And now, he was struggling to survive. Something inside Clint changed. It wasn't just sadness. It was anger. How was this possible? How could someone like Mr. Thompson, who gave so much, receive so little in return? But Clint knew, if he did nothing, nothing would change. That night, lying on the sofa in his apartment, Clint stared at the ceiling. The city around him pulsed with life, but his mind was in another time. in another place. Mr. Thompson, the man who spent decades cleaning the same corridors, scrubbing the same floors, and now, at 80, he was still there. Not because he wanted to, but because he needed to. Clint turned on his side, letting out a long sigh. This wasn't right. It wasn't fair. He began to ask those in charge of the school about the situation of the janitors. The answer was exactly what he had feared. Pensions were low, barely covering the cost of living, especially in a city like Oakland. Many former janitors couldn't afford rent, medicine, or even basic day-to-day expenses. Clint gritted his teeth. Mr. Thompson had spent his life serving others, and in return, society had turned its back on him. But as long as Clint was around, that wouldn't happen. That afternoon, Clint was sitting at his desk, scribbling ideas in a notebook. Throwing money at the problem wasn't enough. Donations disappeared. The problem appeared in the headlines, and then it would disappear. But Clint didn't want headlines. He wanted change. Real change. Lasting change. His pen moved quickly over the paper. What if he created something bigger than just financial aid? What if, instead of simply retiring Mr. Thompson, he became something more? Clint remembered his childhood at school. Mr. Thompson was never just a janitor. He noticed when students were in trouble. He gave advice. He protected those who no one else would. He was always a mentor. That's where the idea came from. The school didn't just need better salaries for its staff. It needed Mr. Thompson's wisdom, a mentoring program, where students could learn life lessons from a man who had spent decades silently guiding them. Clint underlined in his notebook, "Life Lessons with Mr. Thompson, a mentoring program." This wasn't just help, it was purpose. He closed the notebook and sighed. He had a plan, but the hardest part was yet to come. Mr. Thompson was proud. He wouldn't accept help if he thought it was charity. Clint would have to make him see that this wasn't a favor. It was a fresh start. Clint was walking through the school corridors once again, but this time, he wasn't just visiting. He had a mission. His plan was ready. Now, all he had to do was convince the one person who could refuse him. Mr. Thompson himself. Clint had already helped many people in his life, but this one was different. It wasn't just about giving money. It was about giving a man his dignity back. He found Mr. Thompson in the small cleaning depot, repairing an old broom. "You again, Clint?" asked the old man, arching an eyebrow. "I told you I can't stay away," replied Clint, leaning against the door. The old man laughed, shaking his head. "What do you really want, kid?" Clint took a deep breath. "I want to talk about you." Mr. Thompson's hands stopped for a moment. Clint wasted no time. "Your knee isn't going to get better on its own, and you know it. You need surgery, and I'm going to fix it." The elderly man frowned and immediately denied it. "I don't take handouts, Clint." Clint expected this answer. He just nodded, and then played his last card. "It's not a handout. It's a requirement of your new job." Mr. Thompson narrowed his eyes. "What are you talking about?" Clint took a folded piece of paper out of his pocket and put it on the table. "A mentoring program. You won't just be the janitor, you'll be a mentor. You'll teach the students about hard work, resilience, about life." He paused and then added, "But you can't do that limping in pain. So, the surgery. It's not charity. It's part of your new job." Silence. Mr. Thompson stared at the paper, his fingers gliding over the words, "Life Lessons with Mr. Thompson, a mentoring program." Clint could see the conflict in the old man's eyes. He didn't want to stop working, because work gave his life meaning. But that wasn't stopping. It was becoming something bigger. Mr. Thompson let out a heavy sigh. "What if I say no?" Clint shrugged with a mischievous smile. "Then I'll come back here every day, until you say yes." There was a pause. Then Mr. Thompson let out a laugh. "You've always been stubborn, kid." Clint smiled. "I learned from the best." Mr. Thompson picked up the paper. He read it once more, and finally, he sighed. "I guess I don't have a choice, do I?" Clint crossed his arms, satisfied. "No, sir." A few weeks later, Mr. Thompson had the surgery on his knee. Clint made sure he had the best doctors and the best treatment. When the old man woke up from the anesthesia, still a little groggy, he found Clint at his bedside. With his arms crossed, with a playful smile. "Get well soon, old friend. The students are waiting for you." While Mr. Thompson recovered, the program began to take shape. But Clint knew that the biggest challenge was yet to come. Would the school accept his bold proposal? He swallowed. For all these years, he had believed that he had gotten where he was solely on his own merits. But now, someone saw him when he himself felt invisible. And maybe it was time to do the same for someone else. Someone believed in Clint when he himself didn't. And now, after so many years, he was about to pass on that same faith to a new generation. Clint closed the notebook carefully, running his hand over the worn leather cover. "Thank you," he whispered. Mr. Thompson smiled slightly. "It was never just about cleaning corridors, Clint. It's always been about looking after boys like you." The old man's words struck a chord. What his younger self had written there would change the way he saw his own journey. Clint was alone in his apartment. The city lights flickered through the window while his notebook rested on his lap. The words of a child who already felt lost. His younger self wrote about fear, doubt, loneliness, feelings that had been buried for a long time. But one sentence made him stop. "If I ever become someone, I hope to remember what it's like to feel lost. I hope I never forget that sometimes all a person needs is for someone to see them." Clint let out a deep sigh. Mr. Thompson believed him long before he believed it himself. Now it was his turn. Clint closed his notebook with determination. It was time to make sure that no other young person in that school ever felt invisible again. A few weeks later, Clint and Mr. Thompson stood in front of a new building on the school campus. Above the entrance, a sign read, "Thompson Educational Center, a place for second chances." The old man stood in silence, looking at the building, his hands firmly resting on his cane. "Clint, you didn't have to do that." Clint gave his arm a gentle push. No arguments. "It's done." The old man sighed and nodded. "You've always been stubborn, kid." Clint smiled. "I learned from the best." Mr. Thompson had a new purpose, but Clint still had one last surprise for him. International Airport. Voices echoed, suitcases swirled through the corridors. But in a quiet corner near Gate 32, something was about to happen, something that had taken a lifetime to materialize. Mr. Thompson held tightly to the handle of his small, worn suitcase. In his jacket pocket, he carefully tucked a note. For the first time in decades, he wasn't thinking about work, school, or night shifts. He was thinking about his brother, the man he hadn't seen for almost 40 years. Clint stood beside him, hands in his pockets, watching him with a discreet smile. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Mr. Thompson laughed softly. "I've spent my whole life making sure everyone's okay." He paused. He took a deep breath. "Maybe it's time to let someone else take care of me." Clint nodded. "Your brother will be happy to see you." The old man swallowed. He murmured, "I hope so." The silence that followed was full of meaning. Mr. Thompson turned to Clint with a softer expression. "You've done a lot for me, kid." "But you know what?" Clint shook his head. "What's that?" The old man let out a short laugh. It was a small laugh, but full of affection. "You were always a good kid. I just helped you see that." Clint felt a lump in his throat. The last boarding call sounded through the airport. Mr. Thompson squeezed Clint's shoulder lightly before picking up his suitcase. "See you later, kid." Clint nodded. "See you later, old friend." When Clint left the airport, he took out his notebook and opened to the last page. There, in his youthful handwriting, were the words, "If I ever become someone, I hope I don't forget what it's like to feel lost. And if I can, I'll help someone find their way." Clint let out a slight laugh, shaking his head. Now he knew. He had never really been alone. And thanks to Mr. Thompson, neither would the future generations of young people who would pass through that school. That was Mr. Thompson's exciting journey, and the transformation that Clint Eastwood's kindness brought to his life. Now I want to know what you think. Do you believe that a simple act of faith in someone can really change their destiny? Leave your opinion in the comments. If this story has touched your heart, share it. Someone you know might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories about the power of empathy and human resilience. Ready for more inspiration? Click on one of the videos that appear on the screen and be moved by another powerful story. See you in the next video.